The previous video discussed complexities and constraints that a manager might face, such as norms or laws. A situation that many managers might find complex is managing in a unionized environment, managing employees who are represented by a union. Unions go by many different names. More importantly, the actual nature of unions and what they can do varies significantly from country to country. So when dealing with a union, be sure to find out about the laws and usual practices in your own country. In spite of this diversity, every manager needs to remember just two words when it comes to managing in a unionized environment: bilateral, proactive. So, word number one, bilateral. When there's a union present, it's likely the case that there's a contract, a collective bargaining agreement that covers wages, hours, work schedules, employee leaves, layoffs, discipline and discharge, work rules, management rights, and lots of other things. If there is a contract or a collective bargaining agreement that covers your employees, you have to abide by this contract. Now, what happens if there are violations or perceived violations of this contract? There's typically a grievance procedure for dealing with these conflicts. But again, it's bilateral. You have to deal with these conflicts jointly. You can't just unilaterally impose a solution. You have to work through the grievance procedure, which would typically include meeting with employees, meeting with union stewards, meeting with union representatives. Might even get all the way to arbitration, although that's typically rare. But again, the main lesson here is that you have to pursue conflict resolution jointly, bilaterally. Now, if you want to make new changes, develop new policies, you can't just implement them unilaterally either in a unionized environment. You need to negotiate those changes. Or if you're dealing with a works council, you probably need to at least consult with the works council before implementing new changes. So when employees are represented by a union or a works council, say goodbye to being a unilateral manager. You must be bilateral. However, there's many types of bilateral relationships. There's cooperative relationships, competitive relationships, adversarial relationships, even downright hostile relationships. And this brings us to word number two. And that is proactive. Managers in unionized workplaces or in a workplace with a works council need to be proactive. Labor unions have the right to represent and advocate on behalf of workers, but they don't run the business. Who runs the business? You run the business. You set the tone. So you need to be proactive. For example, unions are often associated with restrictive work rules, but these are commonly pursued in reaction to management abuses. A works council is similarly likely to react to the tone set by management. There are two phrases that are common in labor relations circles that can help reinforce why managers in unionized workplaces need to be proactive. First phrase, management acts and the union grieves. You as a manager is in charge of scheduling your employees, assigning their work, approving or not their leaves, setting the pace of work, and other things. If a union thinks that what you're doing violates the contract or violates some policy, then they can object. But it's your job to manage and to manage first. The second phrase that's common in labor relations circles is companies get the union they deserve. Again, you as a manager set the tone. If you are adversarial and aggressive, then unions will likely be confrontational and resistant in return. On the other hand, if you as a manager are collaborative and respectful, unions will likely also be collaborative and respectful. So in conclusion, in a unionized workplace, you need to respect employee voice and the bilateral nature of the relationship with unions. Or in workplaces with works councils, you also need to respect the bilateral nature of the relationship with those works councils. And this includes abiding by any collective bargaining agreements or contracts that might apply to your workers, as well as following any required bargaining or consultation procedures. And remember, you need to be proactive because you set the tone for the relationship. Is the relationship going to be adversarial or is it going to be collaborative? You make the call.